Hello everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Martin Turner, Head of Policy and Public Affairs. There's my picture, so I'm not a disembodied voice. I do look a bit more haggard and old now, I must admit, especially after this busy week. But thank you for joining this webinar. It's to look at the budget and specifically what it means for biotech. So there's lots of important stuff in the budget, of course, on people's pensions, on business rates, on personal tax. That's all important and worth going to read if it will impact you. I'm obviously going to focus more on the biotech specific measures in the budget. So the structure of this webinar, we're going to look at the political context first, which sets up kind of what the factors are that are driving the biotech specific announcements in the budget. Then we'll obviously look at the announcements, so tax changes, investment, and then where we'll go from here after the budget. I'm going to briefly touch on COVID-19 support, just to make sure you're aware of what's come out of the budget on that agenda, and then a Q&A and request for your views at the end of it. I really do want to get your views on the announcements from the budget, as the BIA is going to be doing lots of work in the next few months on some of the announcements, and it's always useful to have the input of our members. And on that front, we're also going to be doing some polls through the presentation, so do be prepared to interact and answer as we go along. So the political context. This was always going to be a hotly anticipated budget. The first one after the general election is always going to be interesting. It's also the first one after Brexit. Quite unusually, the Chancellor is only a few weeks into his job, Rishi Sunak, having taken on the role after Sajid Javid was kind of asked whether he was willing to cede power to number 10 and deciding he didn't want to do that. So Rishi came in and is now the Chancellor and giving a speech that he probably didn't expect to be giving about a month ago. And then if all that wasn't novel and exciting enough, we now have, of course, COVID-19 and a global viral outbreak hitting the shores of the UK just as the budget was being read out. That's all very pertinent to the budget. It definitely shaped the budget. But when we're thinking about what does the budget mean for biotech and what are the announcements in there that will impact our sector, what's driving those announcements, there's a slightly more detailed political context to explore. And that's of the government's agenda. Now, it's an ideologically interventionist government that we now have. Boris Johnson was not elected to be a fiscal hawk like Cameron and Osborne. He was elected to get Brexit done and to crucially level up the economy in favour of the so-called left behind regions. The Tories gained 48 seats, almost all of them from Labour in the north, the famous Red Wall, as you can see on the left, the 2017 general election, and then just to the right of that, the 29 election, and you can see a lot of red constituencies turning blue, particularly around Liverpool, Manchester, and up near Newcastle as well. Traditionally very Labour voting seats, but also very Brexiteer seats. They are turning. Oh, sorry, I've been told you're not seeing the slides. We'll just sort that out. Yep, you can see them now. Apologies for that. So you've not missed any particularly exciting pictures so far. As I was just saying, you've got the Red Wall here. 2019, the election led to MPs in Parliament who are representing those constituencies and urging the government to invest into those regions. And that means more spending on NHS and education, and definitely on infrastructure. So we have a levelling up agenda, as the government is calling it, where much of government policy, including R&D, is seen through the lens of whether it will help the economies of the north and other regions of the UK. Now, what's unusual about this populist agenda is that it extends to a strong interest in science and innovation, particularly driven by Dominic Cummings up there on the right, behind Boris Johnson. And he's seen, of course, as the mastermind of Brexit and the 2019 general election result, but also he's seen as having a very strong interest in science and seeing innovation being the future of the UK economy. This follows on from a growing recognition that the UK has a productivity problem that is leading to low wages and suppressed economic growth, and in many economic circles the recognition that R&D can address that. So we now have a government that is willing to spend on these issues that have been identified for some time now. And in this budget, that's exactly what they've done. They have spent significant amounts of money. The Institute for Fiscal Studies says that overall spending will rise by 26 billion, or 9% in real terms, between 2019 and 2023-24. That is largely paid for by extra borrowing. So austerity is definitely over. Some departments will still be squeezed as spending is focused on areas like health and infrastructure, but we are certainly seeing a different approach to budgets from now on in. So, first poll. Oh, not the first poll. We'll just shift to the poll. There we go. Hopefully it's showing. What does this levelling up agenda mean for the life sciences sector? Is it good news? A, yes, there's great life sciences companies across the UK. B, no, it could be spread investment too thinly. Or C, don't know. Give you a few minutes to vote on that. Okay, so we have the result. 50% say yes, there's great science across the country that will benefit. So that is great news. And 21% saying no, the agenda is not good for the sector, and 29% don't know. Right, moving on to the announcements on tax. We're starting off with R&D tax credits because these are some of the most important forms of support that the government provides to biotech companies. Crucially for our members, the cap on R&D tax credit payments for SMEs, which was proposed back in 2018 and consulted on last year, will not come in this April as planned and will be modified to protect genuine companies. Now, as a bit of background on this, SMEs can get cash payments from HMRC based on how much R&D they can do, but the proposal was to cap this according to the number of employees they have. Now, this could be hugely damaging to the life sciences sector, as many biotech companies outsource their R&D to universities and to other companies, so they have a low headcount but high R&D spend. Now, the cap wasn't intended to hurt these companies; it was intended to prevent shell companies being set up to channel R&D payments through and abuse the system, but unfortunately it was going to impact our sector. So the BIA and our members have for some years been, for last year, sorry, been lobbying the government and working very hard to make sure the Treasury understands the unintended consequences of this measure. And it looks like they've listened. We can expect a consultation shortly, and the measure will now be delayed from this April to April 2021, which is great news. So I think we might be having some technical issues here.
We'll work it out, keep talking.
Right, moving on to the RDEC rate. So R&D tax credits don't just benefit SMEs, they benefit large companies as well, and that scheme is called RDEC. It's going to be made more generous. This was promised in the general election manifesto for the Conservatives, and the increase has now been confirmed at budget to go up from 12 to 13%. This is welcome and makes the UK more attractive to large pharma and R&D investments. It also benefits some SMEs that benefit from this scheme as well, because some SMEs do use this scheme rather than the smaller one. Now that you can see my slides, here's just the text from the budget document showing that they've listened to industry on the R&D, the SME cap, and will be consulting further on it. Right, moving on to entrepreneurs relief. Oh no, actually, sorry, I forgot about a very important announcement actually. So consulting on including data and cloud computing costs in the R&D tax credit system. So currently, you can claim on all sorts of consumables for your R&D, like chemicals, reagents, oligonucleotides, test tubes, but you can't claim on data, which is, of course, as we know, a very important consumable in modern day R&D. So this has been something that we've been saying for a long time needs to change. The government has now listened, very luckily, and will be consulting on how exactly they will do that in the next period of time. We're expecting that consultation to come out in the next few months. Now, entrepreneurs relief was another kind of hotly anticipated announcement in this budget. There was a lot of rumours, there's a lot of concern and speculation that entrepreneurs relief would be abolished, meaning founders of companies would pay more tax on their gains when they come to sell the company. We were also worried that this was going to hit the enterprise management incentive, or EMI, which works through the same system as entrepreneurs relief, but is used to provide tax relief to employees who have shares in their companies. And that's really important because SMEs that can't afford to pay high salaries can offer these shares options to their employees to help attract the best and retain the best talent in their companies to help them grow. So we're worried that changes to entrepreneurs relief and EMI could be brought in this budget. But actually the change has been pretty minimal. The £10 million lifetime limit on how much you can benefit from the relief has been brought down to 1 million. This will mean that it will not really impact that many people, this change. It's only going to impact the highest beneficiaries of the scheme. And actually, there was some good news that the government will consult on EMI eligibility, so looking at which companies can benefit from it. And that's really, the wording in the document and the conversations I've had with Treasury officials since the budget suggest that that's a very positive consultation and could lead to more companies benefiting from the scheme. So we're going to engage with that, and I think that's going to be very helpful indeed. Now, a few other tax announcements. Corporation tax will remain at 19%, sorry, for the foreseeable future. It was going to go down to 17%. This obviously provides more income for the government if they are going to collect more tax, and that will be paying for some of the other areas of investment that the government has prioritised. It still means we have the lowest corporation tax rate in the G20, making us attractive to overseas investors. And of course, we still have the patent box, which wasn't mentioned in this budget and remains unchanged. And that allows companies to only pay 10% corporation tax on any profits coming from registered IP. Now, I have a few more esoteric tax issues for you, which is always very exciting. The plastic packaging tax is something I had the pleasure of working on last year. the government wants to understandably encourage the use of recycled plastic in packaging, and is therefore going to tax companies that are not using up to 30% recycled material in their plastic packaging. They consulted on this last year. The BIA met with Treasury officials a few times to help them understand the impact this might have on our sector, where very high quality plastic is required, especially when it's in contact with medicines, and therefore recycled material is not always suitable for that type of purpose. They appear to have largely listened. They will be consulting further on whether plastic that will be in direct contact with medicines will be excluded, so that's very welcome. And there's also a 10-ton de minimis, so if your company importing or using less than 10 tons worth of plastic in your packaging, you will be excluded. So this should probably help a lot of companies in our sector who won't be impacted by the tax as a result. Also, the reading tax. So digital publications are currently taxed for VAT at 20%, and that will be abolished to better match paper publications which aren't subject to VAT. So that will, of course, impact your Kindle books, but more importantly for our sector, it will impact the scientific publication subscriptions that you might have. So if you've got those, you'll be paying slightly less, which is all very welcome. Right, another poll. Which of these tax changes is most important to you? A, the R&D tax credit cap modification and delay, the rise of the RDEC rate to 13% and the inclusion of data within that, the entrepreneurs relief downgrade, corporation tax remaining at 19%, or plastic packaging tax / the reading tax. We're only allowed 5 in here, so that's why those two have been grouped together. So I think you can vote now or in a second. Yeah. Right. Well, so votes are coming in. Excellent. It's definitely looking at R&D tax credit cap seems to be out in front, which I'm not surprised at. It's I met with HMRC yesterday, and they said they got about 90 consultations from 90 submissions from that consultation. And a very large proportion apparently said that it mattered hugely to those companies and that they supported the BIA submission. So thank you for all the BIA members who did support our submission in their own submissions to the HMRC consultation on that issue. Right, how are we doing? We've got 58% of people have voted so far, and definitely the overwhelming majority are going for the cap. Should we leave it there? I think we don't have any more people voting, so we'll close that poll. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so moving on, if we can get our slides back. Right, moving on to investment. So this is where there really was quite a pleasant surprise for the scientific community. R&D investment will hit 22 billion per annum, so this is government R&D investment, 22 billion per annum by 2024. It was originally intended to be going up to 18 billion. So this is an extra 4 billion per annum by that year. So this is a huge extra investment. It will mean the greatest increase ever seen in the government's R&D investment. And it's all about trying to hit the government's target of the UK as a total, so government and private, investing up to 2.4% of GDP in R&D. So the government is definitely stepping up to the plate and putting its money where its mouth is. Now, there's not much detail in the consultation, in the budget document about how this money will be spent, and crucially for us, what it means for Innovate UK's budget. Innovate UK being the grant funding body that gives to our sector. We've been calling for the biomedical catalyst to be refilled, as it's an incredibly successful scheme. But we do think, even though it wasn't in the budget, it wasn't announced in the budget, there's now a good chance that as UKRI allocates the funding to Innovate UK, we might see some positive movement on the biomedical catalyst. Also, a lot of this investment, extra investment, is going to be front loaded. So spent in the next few years, and there's going to be a 15% increase to the R&D budget for 2020-21. So this does leave a decent amount of headroom for the biomedical catalyst to be refilled. And the government does, in the budget, specify that 900 million will be made available for high potential technology sectors, including life sciences. There's also aerospace and supercomputing in there too. So that 900 million could be Innovate UK's budget. That's possible. It would mean a slight increase, but again, it depends how that money is spent exactly for us. There's also plenty of wording in the document about spreading this money across the UK, as I said, the levelling up agenda, and also earmarking several £100 million of it for basic research in the physical sciences. Now, this reflects Dominic Cummings' interest in those areas particularly. Finally, it's worth noting 800 million has been confirmed for the British ARPA. So this is going to be a new funding agency. Its shape and mission is yet to be determined really, but it's going to be loosely modelled on the American DARPA. So this is an organisation that's been around for the 50s and has been credited with creating the internet and GPS, many other great innovations that have made a big difference to people's lives. So this will be a new high-risk funding agency backed with 800 million that will be up and running in the next year or so. BIA will be engaging with this and figuring out how this could help make the UK a great place to do life sciences R&D. Now, specifically for life science companies, we're very pleased to see that £200 million was confirmed for a life sciences scale-up fund. Now, this is called the Life Sciences Investment Programme. It will be run by the British Business Bank and make £200 million available for equity investments. Now, if you've not heard of the British Business Bank, it's because it doesn't directly invest equity into businesses. It does it through venture capital schemes. So that's probably how this money will be invested. It goes into a venture capital fund. That venture capital fund then also raises private money, aiming to leverage twice as much money as it got from the British Business Bank, and then it chooses the companies. So this 200 million will hopefully leverage another 400 million to then support life sciences scaling companies. Now, we don't think that's enough. We're definitely talking to the government about how that ambition could be increased. We think that we need at least a £1 billion investment from the government that would leverage another 2 billion from the private sector, and then we can really start changing the environment for the larger life sciences companies in the UK. That announcement, that programme will launch within a year, it's said, and complements the already 350 million that the British Business Bank invests into our sector. There's also more money made available for the British Business Bank. Although it wasn't explicitly said in the budget, I suspect it's to address the fact that the European Investment Fund is no longer allowing investments into the UK, and that will obviously as a result of us leaving the EU. So that money will be to compensate for that for to some degree. Now, the government's agenda isn't all about the north. They are investing in the south as well. And for anyone working and living in Cambridge, they'll be pleased to hear that there is now confirmation of funding for the South Cambridge railway station. We like to call this the Biotech Express at the BIA, and it will connect London and particularly the Crick Institute to the South Cambridge Biomedical Campus, which is the largest of its type in Europe. So that's obviously really welcome. There's great companies there, AstraZeneca, Abcam, there's the Laboratory of Molecular Biology there. So this is really great to see more linking up of the UK's scientific infrastructure. There will also be an extensive house building programme in the area that they are calling the Oxcam Arcs. This runs between Oxford and Cambridge, obviously intended to relieve some of the high house prices there, which will support the growth of more biotech companies as more people can afford to live in that region. So very welcome. Right, now, third poll, third and final poll. So, was this budget good for life sciences? A, yes, Sunak knocked it out the park. B, meh, it had some good bits. C, no, let's hope the spending review delivers something good. or D, we're all doomed, I'm off to self-isolate. Okay, votes are coming in. It is looking very much like you liked some of it, but not others. Fairly unenthusiastic, but there's some positivity. There's 20% roughly for it was a good budget. But as an audience, you're generally not giving it the thumbs down, which is good. So we'll just let some votes come in. We're at 73% voted now. Give you a few more minutes. Okay, we're at 75%. Shall we close it here? So lukewarm response, but you guys said that there's some good bits in there, which is always good to know. All right, going back to our slides. Okay, what's next with the budget? So obviously there's a few consultations, the ones on R&D tax credits I mentioned, on EMI, Enterprise Management Incentive, and on plastic packaging. If these matter to you, please do get in touch with me. My details will be at the end of this slideshow, and do respond yourself, because the more companies that respond to these consultations, the better informed the government is on making decisions. We'll also expect very shortly more information on exactly how that R&D increase for next year will be spent. So do watch out for that. We'll do some analysis when that comes out. And the government has said that it will be doing a spending review to conclude in July. And this is when the government will decide how it's going to, more detail about how it's going to spend its money over the next 3 years. Now, of course, they say that's going to be happening until July. Whether the coronavirus outbreak impacts that, we'll have to wait and see. There's also an autumn statement, usually at the end of something like the CSR. So I'd expect another fiscal event towards the end of the year. Right, if you need to go and find out any more detail on the budget announcements, there's the link, go to the Treasury website. You can also go to the BIA website, where we have a blog with all this analysis also in writing. Okay, briefly, I want to touch on the COVID-19 support. The budget did include some money to support companies, particularly those struggling. The SMEs that have a turnover of less than 41 million can apply for a loan from the British Business Bank. So do go and look for that if that will be of help. And statutory sick pay will be paid from day one of someone being sick, and it will be refunded by the government to SMEs, so any company with less than 250 employees. There's a range of guidance and support on there for individuals and businesses, so do please go to the Health Department's website to make sure you have the latest information on that. Okay, Q&A now. This is your opportunity to ask questions, or more importantly, share your views. Obviously, I'm very grateful for your interactions in the poll, but please do share your views in written form or ask questions. Now, I will say I'm not a tax expert, so if I can't answer your questions, I will refer them to a member of our Finance and Tax Advisory Committee, and I will get back to you in an email. Do we have any questions or comments? No, you're all being shy. Felt the poll was enough. What is the current lifetime limit on EMI? So it's the same as for entrepreneurs relief. So it's current. Well, it was 10 million. It is now 1 million as of midnight on Wednesday. So I mean, this really shouldn't impact very many people. If you make more than £1 million, then it will impact you when you sell your shares, but if not, then you won't be impacted. Is there any information on where the British Business Bank has invested to date and how much? Well, so for the life sciences sector, they've invested £350 million to date. I don't think most of the investments are public. They've recently announced that they invested into the Dementia Discovery Fund and also a few other funds. You can go onto their website and see that. I think they will they'll probably be doing more publicity over the next year of the companies that they're supporting. All right, another question. Overall, would you say that the current budget has maintained fund levels when compared to the European Innovation Fund activity historically? I don't have that data, so the question is whether this extra investment is going to match what we've seen from the EU. It's very hard to say, to be honest. I will look into that and I can see if I can find more information. Will the British Business Bank be aiming to replace the role of the European Investment Fund with the completion of the Brexit negotiations? I can't speak on behalf of the British Business Bank, but what we've heard from the government is that that is their intention, yes. In at least 2 previous budgets, they've been explicitly given money to replace the European Investment Fund. So I think that is the direction of travel, certainly. Since there's a bit of interest in the British Business Bank, I'd say their growing role has come from something called the Patient Capital Review back in 2017. And that identified structural weaknesses in the UK venture capital ecosystem, and led to the creation of a £2.5 billion British patient capital entity, what it's called. So that's £2.5 billion fund, which has now been increased to 2.7 billion with this budget, and that will invest over the next 10 years into UK venture capital funds. I expect that if we have a continuing interventionist government like we do now, that could increase. Will the ARPA style scheme be an open scope call? If so, can life sciences realistically compete? I'm not quite sure if that question is asking about creating, about shaping what ARPA does, and how wide the scope that is, or whether it's more the funding it provides for companies. So I think all of that is yet to be determined. We are hopefully meeting civil servants creating ARPA in the next few weeks, so we might be able to share more information, but they're trying to set it up quickly, and I think there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, my impression is that it will behave a bit like a venture capitalist, of looking around the country. Where's their interesting IP? What are we trying to achieve? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Where's the knowledge and the technology in the UK to help address that? Some of that will be in companies, some of that will be in academia, and I think that's how it will function. Some of the challenges will obviously not be life sciences, but I suspect, I put my money, to be honest, on there being some form of life science theme to it, to part of it. Right, any more questions? Okay, I don't think so. So thank you for joining us. Sorry about some of the technical hitches. It's been very good talking to you today. Thank you for participating in the polls. If you've got any more views, my information is just coming up there. There's my email address and my telephone number. Do get in contact. If you'd like to be involved in any of our consultation responses on R&D tax credits or anything else, please do get in touch. And to mark your diaries, on the 23rd of March, we will be publishing our next biotech finance investment report. So looking at how much has been invested into the sector in the first quarter of this year. So do keep a lookout for that. So thanks for joining. I'll sign off now, and I hope you all have a good weekend.